Many people assume Earth versus the Flying Saucers is just another cheesy 1950s B-movie.
It's time we decided to do something.
The film actually hides real military secrets beneath its special effects. The script was based on actual Project Blue Book UFO files. The iconic saucer sound is literally sewage rushing through California's pipes. Today, we're uncovering 14 hidden truths about Earth versus the Flying Saucers, including the blacklisted screenwriter whose name was erased for 50 years, Harryhausen's obsessive brick-by-brick destruction, and the ending that was cut because the alien costumes were too clunky to move. Fact 1. The Wastewater sound secret. The iconic wavering hum of the flying saucers is one of the most recognizable sounds in science fiction history. Its origin is absolutely disgusting. The sound wasn't created with synthesizers or electronic instruments. Sound designers literally recorded sewage and wastewater rushing through the industrial pipes of the Redondo Beach wastewater treatment facility in Southern California. They played the recording back at various speeds while manually turning the volume dial up and down by hand, creating the pulsating, throbbing quality. Every time you hear those menacing flying saucers approaching, you're listening to the sound of Southern California's plumbing system as the world ends, taking something mundane and revolting, transforming it into something genuinely frightening. One of the most accidentally brilliant pieces of sound design in cinema history. Fact 2. The Non-Fiction Foundation. Unlike other invasion movies of the 1950s, which were purely fictional, Earth vs. The Flying Saucers was explicitly based on the nonfiction book Flying Saucers from Outer Space by Major Donald Kehoe. Kehoe was a retired Marine Corps aviator who became one of America's most prominent UFO researchers. He had access to actual classified Project Blue Book files, the U.S. Air Force's official investigation into UFO sightings. Because of this foundation in supposedly real cases, the film uses authentic military jargon, realistic radio communication procedures, and official-sounding government reports. The screenplay deliberately blurred the line between science fiction and documentary-style realism, making Earth versus the Flying Saucers feel more like a training film or newsreel than typical Hollywood monster movie. The goal was simple: make audiences believe this invasion could happen on their own front lawns. Fact 3. Harryhausen's brick-by-brick obsession. To save money on the already tiny budget, legendary stop-motion animator Harryhausen didn't just animate the flying saucers. He personally animated the destruction of Washington, D.C.'s most iconic buildings frame by painstaking frame. For sequences where alien saucers crash into the Washington Monument and U.S. Capitol, Harryhausen used thousands of tiny handmade lead bricks, animating them falling and tumbling individually, one frame at a time. It took him weeks of 18-hour days to film approximately 5 seconds of finished footage. But the physical weight and realistic physics of the debris looked infinitely more convincing than any 1950s firework explosion or simple miniature collapse. Harryhausen's obsessive attention to detail, his willingness to spend hundreds of hours on shots most filmmakers would fake, is what separated his work from every other special effects artist of the era. Fact 4. The Blacklisted Screenwriter. For nearly 5 decades, the name of the man who actually wrote Earth versus the Flying Saucers was completely missing from the film's credits. Screenwriter Bernard Gordon was a victim of the Hollywood blacklist during the McCarthy-era anti-communist witch hunts. Because Gordon had been accused of communist sympathies, he was forbidden from working under his own name. The studio used a front writer, someone who would pretend to be the author while Gordon did all the actual work in secret. Gordon's name was only officially restored to the film's credits during the DVD era in the early 2000s, nearly 50 years after the movie was released. One of the most shameful examples of how political persecution destroyed careers and erased artists from history. Gordon spent most of his life watching other people take credit for his work. Fact 5. The Solidified Electricity Invention. The concept of alien invaders wearing protective suits made of solidified electricity rather than traditional metal armor was Ray Harryhausen's original idea, not something from the source material. Harryhausen felt that depicting advanced extraterrestrial beings wearing crude metal suits was too boring for creatures capable of interstellar travel. By making their protection energy-based rather than physical, Harryhausen created elegant explanation for why aliens were invulnerable to conventional bullets, but could be killed by the hero's experimental ultrasonic weapon that destabilized their energy fields. This creative choice effectively invented the concept of energy shields that would become ubiquitous in modern science fiction. From Star Trek to Halo, Harryhausen accidentally created one of the foundational tropes of the entire genre, just trying to make his monsters more interesting. Fact 6. Stealing from War of the Worlds. Despite having Ray Harryhausen's genius available, the production budget was still paper-thin. In the sequence where a cathedral is destroyed by alien attack, the filmmakers literally stole an expensive visual effects shot from the 1953 Paramount film The War of the Worlds, inserted it without permission or credit. If the dramatic explosion looks familiar to viewers who've seen both films, that's because it's the exact same footage, just optically cropped, darkened, and flipped horizontally to disguise its origin. One of the most brazen examples of effects footage piracy in 1950s Hollywood. The fact that they got away with it shows how loose copyright enforcement was during that era. Fact 7. The helmet controversy. When the alien invaders first emerged during early test screenings, the audiences reportedly giggled and laughed instead of feeling scared. The original helmet design was, to put it delicately, unintentionally suggestive. The smooth, elongated shape created visual associations completely inappropriate for a serious invasion film. The embarrassed production crew had to quickly redesign the helmets, adding aggressive ridge textures and darkening the metallic finish to make the invaders look like menacing robotic threats, less like an accidental biological joke. The redesign worked. The aliens became genuinely frightening, but the original helmets remain a legendary production disaster that almost derailed the film's credibility. Fact 8. The Treadmill Forest Fire. The scene where Dr. Marvin and his companions run through a burning forest to escape the alien attack is a masterpiece of low-budget trickery. The actors weren't actually running through any forest. They were running on a motorized treadmill in a completely dark soundstage while projected footage of a real forest fire played on a massive screen behind them. If you watch their feet carefully, you can occasionally see them slide unnaturally across the ground. The treadmill's speed didn't perfectly match the camera's frame rate, creating slight disconnect between running motion and background movement, the kind of subtle technical flaw most audiences would never consciously notice. But that reveals the ingenious workarounds low-budget filmmakers had to invent. Fact 9. The voice of the haunted mansion. The distorted, wavering voice of the alien leader belongs to legendary voice actor Paul Frees, completely uncredited in the film. And modern audiences know Frees as the ghost host narrator from Disneyland's Haunted Mansion, or the voice of the Pillsbury Doughboy. Frees recorded his alien dialogue normally in a standard booth. Then, a technician manually shook the reel-to-reel tape machine during playback, creating that distinctive electronic warble that made the voice sound inhuman and mechanical. Another brilliant example of practical analog sound design. Effects that audiences assumed required expensive electronic equipment, really just someone shaking a tape machine. Fact 10. The 1955 Mercury Nightmare. The car that Dr. Marvin and his wife drive throughout the film is a 1955 Mercury Custom. It became an unexpected production disaster. During location filming in the California desert, the Mercury broke down completely in the middle of a remote road shoot, miles from any garage or towing service. The budget couldn't afford a professional tow truck. The entire film crew had to physically push the broken car while actors sitting inside pretended to be driving normally for the camera. Most interior driving shots are actually actors in a stationary car on a soundstage, wiggling the steering wheel while background plates play behind them. The Mercury became such a mechanical nightmare that the crew joked about leaving it in the desert as sacrifice to the alien invaders. Fact 11. The stock footage invasion. Approximately 30% of Earth versus the flying saucers is composed of real military stock footage recycled from completely unrelated historical events. To make the invasion feel global without international shooting locations, producers incorporated footage of the British battleship HMS Barham sinking during World War II, failed V-2 rocket test launches from the 1940s, various military exercises, most controversially, actual documentary footage from a 1944 airshow accident where planes crashed and pilots died, repurposed to simulate aircraft being hit by alien death rays. This reuse of real tragedy was considered ethically questionable even by 1950s standards. One of the film's most uncomfortable secrets. Real people died to create footage that was later turned into entertainment. Fact 12. The Mars Attacks Connection director Tim Burton was so obsessed with Earth versus the flying saucers that when he made Mars Attacks, in 1996, he explicitly told his production designers to directly copy Ray Harryhausen's iconic saucer design, rather than creating something original. The counter-rotating metal rings, the geometric dome structure, the distinctive death ray dishes, a deliberate one-to-one tribute to Harryhausen's 1956 original. Even the climactic scene where the Washington Monument collapses was a shot-for-shot recreation. Burton wasn't hiding his influences or avoiding comparisons. He was openly celebrating the film that inspired his entire aesthetic approach to alien invasion stories. Mars Attacks is essentially a love letter to Earth versus the flying saucers wrapped in Burton's trademark dark humor. Fact 13. The suicidal General Hanley. There's a detail most viewers miss during the film's second act. When the aliens abduct and return General Hanley, he has been brain-drained and turned into an emotionless zombie slave. In the original screenplay, there was a devastating moment where Hanley briefly regains consciousness and awareness, just long enough to realize with horror what has been done to him. In that moment, he was supposed to desperately beg his own daughter to kill him, to execute him before the alien programming reasserts control. Studio executives cut this sequence. A father begging his daughter to shoot him was far too dark for Saturday matinee audience. The removal significantly weakened the emotional stakes and horror of the mind control subplot. Fact 14. The abrupt alternate ending. Many fans notice the film's ending feels surprisingly abrupt and anticlimactic after all the buildup. There's a good reason. There was originally a planned extended finale where aliens landed their damaged saucers in the Capitol ruins and launched a final desperate ground assault. But when production began filming with stunt performers in the alien costumes, they discovered the suits were so heavy and clunky that actors could barely walk, let alone fight convincingly. Rather than spending weeks redesigning suits or choreographing embarrassing slow-motion ground battle, director Fred F. Sears made the pragmatic decision: scrap the entire ground war concept. End the movie immediately after the last saucer crashed. Budget and costume limitations accidentally created the film's most criticized weakness. Sometimes the ending isn't a creative choice, it's a surrender. So if you saw a flying saucer hovering in the desert and broadcasting a message, would you try to make contact or just keep driving and pretend you saw nothing? Let me know in the comments which sound is more terrifying: Deep Impact's washing machine comet or this film's sewage pipe saucers. If you want more declassified files on the movies that built science fiction from scratch, hit subscribe. See you in the next one.